All right, welcome. Good morning. It's Friday. Woo! I'm very excited about this oncoming spring. I'm excited about the weekend. I'm remarkably positive about birthdays and shit like that, which I know won't last, but you know what? I've got a week to myself mentally. Hooray! And we've got Mbulelo, we've got Leigh-Ann, we've got Ben, and we got you to join us this morning, which is all we need. So let's get cracking. Let's make this thing happen. All right, no politics Friday, which is a huge relief. Some politics may creep in from time to time, but I promise you we try our best to avoid it. There's lots of other good stuff to talk about. Anyway, so Anami says hi from a locked down New Zealand.
Oh, my word.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
It really sucks at 6.
Really
we start at 6 in the morning.
Sucks in the morning, but it sucks.
It's like one person with COVID and the whole place is shut down.
Which I can't quite understand because, there's 2 islands, right? So is this person on the North Island, South Island? And if so, is the other island really aggrieved by this?
Are people throwing stones at them and bricks and tomatoes?
No, because they're a very ordinary bunch of people, New Zealanders. They're very, striving to be working class and beige, so they won't be throwing no stones.
Well, you've been there. I mean, you actually, you have some on the ground experience, like that woman in Afghanistan now who's reporting on the Taliban on CNN. She's got on the ground experience with the Taliban. Now, you have on the ground experience with New Zealanders, and we gave them a bit of a beating yesterday because there was that video that I shared with you, or you shared with me, Ben, about those New Zealanders who used to be South Africans. And anyway, got a whole conversation going yesterday. So,
do you remember? I think it was back in the 90s. Maybe this is just a Cape Town thing, but every now and again, I'd have to go into that store, Biggie Best. My parents my mother used to go there from time to time. Like New Zealand's kind of like that. It's pretty, but you sure as fuck don't want to be there for a long time. And that's
you don't want everything in your room done by Biggie Best. The wallpaper, the bedding, the curtains. Otherwise, it's too much.
And then you lived a life of potpourri. There was a stage that was like a thing.
Yeah,
we were really traumatized as kids. It was very much a thing. Was this like just a Cape Town thing, or do you guys also have that up here?
Absolutely not.
No, there was a time. I mean, there are still a lot of people. In fact, I know one family in particular where the mother, she decorates the entire house in shades of beige, and everything is beige. So you look like you're on the inside of a vanilla cake when you're in her house. There's no color. Everything is as unobtrusive and innocuous and middle of the road and neutral as possible. That's the way they choose to live. And then I think their kids are being indoctrinated into neutrality. Like everything must be uncontroversial, as bereft of any opinion as possible. If you keep it in the middle of the road, this is their philosophy anyway, then no one will ever need to get into trouble. That's the way they live. That's that's sort of tricky. That's a philosophy.
It's like a command setting. I think I was brought up like that as well. I don't know. I always forget because I wasn't really around. But it's a command factor, So it's like, well, we don't want any trouble, so we're just going to stay here. It's also called living under the radar. But come on, if you've seen Top Gun at least once, you want to live above the radar.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, just you want to take a couple of chances in your life. There's this risk-reward ratio, which obviously is a big deal in people's heads. And since New Zealand came up, there's a zero appetite for risk in that country. Zero. People think that because we play rugby, both nations, that we have so much in common. And it's just not true.
Yeah, it's a good point you make there, Gareth, because if you go back to the original Maori people, right, they are some of the most savage warriors known to people who had feet and hands. And I would love to know from them, because what often happened throughout history was that obviously Western civilization moved to a place, introduced lots of alcohol and processed cheese, and everyone just became fat and very lazy. I'd love to know deep down, the Maori kind of people of New Zealand, how they feel about how boring that country's got in the last 100 years. Because those guys used to live on the edge, right?
They explored the entire
people.
Yeah, the Polynesians explored every corner of the Pacific, which is an enormous space. I mean, literally going from island to island and establishing civilizations on all of those islands, or certainly societies. I think that, for the Maori or the Polynesian people as a larger kind of umbrella population, they must be completely bored, which is probably why I hear from Crystal, who used to work, here in South Africa. She used to run that extraordinary confectionery of hers. Talk about vanilla cakes. I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night just dreaming of the cake that Crystal used to make for us for our birthdays. But you think back to the kind of email that she sent me a little while ago, which I read out on air, and she's not looking for trouble. She moved to New Zealand because she wanted to, not because something horrible happened to her. And she's, by all measures, she's kind of happy there. She's pleased she made the decision, but she said, don't think that anywhere is heaven, paradise. And she explained that there's a huge meth problem, that the unemployment with kids is a major, or not kids, but with young adults is a major issue. There's also there's this kind of laxity, this moral kind of relativism that is set in all over the Western world. And even though New Zealand is as far east as it's possible to go, I'm going to include them in the Western world because that's sort of their sphere of influence. I think purposelessness has become a major thing. That's why I like watching the Taliban on TV. I don't like what they're doing, and I've never liked the Taliban. There's nothing about them that I enjoy. But seeing them in their tribal savagery and their barbaric, medieval, pre-medieval, dark age way of dealing with things. I mean, they were literally whipping people at the air. They had whips, like the kinds of whips you use on animals. They were whipping people at the airport into submission. These guys in turbans and like sandals. They're whipping people into submission. And someone in the crowd held up an old Afghan flag, the kind that if you type in Afghanistan on your phone, it comes up as the icon. Some person in the crowd was holding one of those up. So instead of finding the person in the crowd or shouting at them or getting a loud hailer, they just started shooting into the crowd. And if they hit the person who had the flag, that was fine. And if they took out some other people, that was also fine. There was this really disturbing video of this little girl that someone showed me yesterday. She's wailing and screaming because she's being pulled away from her father, who has been identified by the Taliban as a collaborator with the United States. He might have worked for he might have worked as a translator. He might have worked for the contractors that were there, whatever. But he's been abandoned by Joe Biden and the rest of the U.S. administration. And he's now going to be executed, no doubt. And she's a young girl. She's probably, 7, 8 years old. She's screaming because Taliban are taking her away. They're going to sell her into sex slavery. What I enjoy, if there is some kind of, and I don't like the word enjoy in this context, but what I like to see is it's a reminder to those of us who have lived in soft Western liberal democracies for so many years. It's a reminder of what barbaric, tribal, backward monsters humans actually are at heart. Because there's a part of the Taliban in all of us, right? And I'm by no means creating my own kind of moral relativism here. But when you see that that's how these fucking monsters behave, and when you see them like dancing on the desk of the guy who used to be president, you see them getting in those bumper cars, which I know, Ben, is your favorite video of the Taliban. You're dealing with the lowest hanging fruit of humanity. It does kind of put everything in perspective. Suddenly you think, maybe those transgender bathrooms, not such a big deal.
Yeah.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we shit about a gender wage gap, and we listen to nonsense about like how racist Seattle is, and we need to, and in the problem with the world is nonsense like, the difference between a conservative and a liberal, or is it free speech, or should Mark Zuckerberg be able to ban us from Twitter or whatever it is, not Twitter, but Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook. And then you look at what life is like for people who are they're so desperate to get out of Afghanistan that they will cling to the landing gear of a plane and then drop from that plane at more than a kilometer into the sky, knowing they're going to die. But to die trying to escape is better than to try and live under the Taliban. It's like suddenly everything is, you've got massive context in your life, perspective,
Hugely. And, it took yesterday, my mom said exactly the same thing. I was talking about the fact that I don't know if you can see, but my glasses are being held together with sticky tape.
Oh my God. Did your glasses and your sleeping Jesus have a bumper accident? Like
no,
the bumper Taliban were driving?
It was the cat who I'm probably killing today. Shame. She's on her way out.
Killing her or you? Oh, right. Okay. I thought you were it's not violent. You're going to have it put down.
Save it for another day. Otherwise, I'll end in tears.
Right.
But she knocked them over and they crumbled.
Sorry.
But you really made me get off the point there,
Yes, yes.
But the fact that I just haven't had a chance, and also I'm waiting for the next cusp of my medical age so that I can go and get the new glasses. And my mom said, and she sat there in her wheelchair and she watches TV all day, and she said, all you have to do is think about the people in Afghanistan who are clinging to the bottom of an airplane because they're so desperate to escape, and that puts everything into perspective. Exactly that.
It does. Well, all right. On that depressing note, I mean,
well, let's turn it around. There is definitely a Sally right now going to a palm reader because they are a Sagittarius and a 4 on the Enneagram, and they have no perspective because that's the biggest problem in their lives is how do they meet the husband of their dreams right now?
Yeah,
who matches
sorry, Mbulelo, I can't hear you over that jacket of yours. Sorry, say that again.
Listen, standards aren't for everybody, Ben. Don't worry about what I'm up to, Mr. Ben.
And also, why are you having a go at me? Because I'm a Sagittarius with an Enneagram of 4. I don't know. Forget.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, your passive aggressive behavior is something I've known about you for a very long time.
I feel like I can take our negative perspective here and make it even more negative. Just let's test you.
Ooh, why not? That's exciting.
Let's drop to the absolute depths of what you have to wrestle with as a human being this morning, because I am so excited. I know that sounds paradoxical, but I'm excited to talk to a guy today who I've been so keen to interview for such a long time, and he's eventually agreed, although he won't do it on camera. I knew there'd be some complication, but he won't do it on camera. His name is Professor David Benatar, and he's based here in South Africa. He is the guy who says, get ready, this is going to be great for a Friday morning. I had to do the interview on a Friday because then I'd be in my most positive mood, and I love Fridays. So I'm going to talk to him today because he is the world's foremost philosopher when it comes to the concept of antinatalism, A-N-T-E, natalism. Or is it A-N-T-I? I'm not even sure. Anyway, David Benatar is the guy who has more or less concreted the theory that it would have been better if none of us had existed at all. He doesn't like the idea of existence. He thinks that life is so full of suffering and misery, and the human condition is so flawed and so ugly. And so, yeah. No, listen, if this doesn't force you to come to terms with all of your demons, then I don't know what will. But Professor David Benatar is the guy who will say, you know what? It's actually nonsense. You have purpose of life? He says, no purpose. You were brought into this world involuntarily. You didn't have a say. You just were made by your parents creating the beast with 2 backs. And suddenly you were born into it. And you're like, what the hell am I doing here? And now you are condemned to suffer a mortal life as a result of no choice of your own. So, that those people are like, well, life is all about purpose and meaning. And, I'm kind of one of those people. You're optimistic and you wake up in the morning and you're like, the miracle is that we're alive. Well, not to Professor David Benatar. He's like, fuck that. I'm not into that shit. So we'll find out from him. And I suppose the interview will be scheduled for next week sometime. And you can get to hear it yourself. I think it's going to be very interesting. I'm excited about it and a little bit nervous, which doesn't happen very much anymore when I interview people. So looking forward to that.
Well, he's right, obviously, but it's what you do with it. It defines you as a person, because it's a little stupid. I mean, like there's no reason for us to be here. I mean, but then again, everything is stupid. There's not an Impala that just got born right now that's going to make an indent in the world. No, he's going to make a meal. Like there isn't a particular kind of horse that's going to be incredible. It's going to run around. So we all are living a purposeless, stupid existence, but it's what we do with it that makes it entertaining. And ultimately, this is all big show and dance kind of thing. We just go from one endorphin rush to the next, which is cool. I like that. I like the fact that we're here just for some sort of shits and giggles thing.
We're just entertaining ourselves until we die.
Precisely,
and
Leigh-Ann.
I've got to say though, I really enjoy the show.
Exactly. So do I.
It is one of those things I look forward to.
No, I'm talking about the show of life.
Yes, I know.
I really enjoyed that too. This is a small facet of the bigger show, and I take and derive enormous pleasure out of the interactions I have with people, both people who agree with David Benatar, and there are only a few of those in the world, because most of us are so into ourselves that we can't imagine a universe where we aren't at the center of it. And then those people who are able to integrate some kind of meaning and reason into what someone like him might say is just pointless. So it's a nice dance to watch. It's just fun. It's like watching a really great human being doing really great things. And I know that this is something that appeals to all of us and to most of the people who listen to us. There's nothing better than seeing someone who's the best at what they do. It's great. Because even if we are just these mortal sacks of shit that last 100 years, even if that is our lot, it's not the worst thing. There are much more miserable animals,
And the thing is,
the Taliban. I mean, Christ, would you want to be born as a Talib in Afghanistan? Really.
Yeah, and the thing is, just talking about euthanasia.
What a great morning!
But okay.
Some people wow, why did I come into this show this morning? I was having such a good start to my Friday. Go ahead, Leigh-Ann.
It's not really an option for humans unless you have lots of money and live in a country where it's allowed. Suicide is just really horrible, and
it is awful.
Yeah, leaves other people suffering. But and we can't. We use the term "curl up and die," and we feel that way sometimes. But we can't really do any of those things. They're just morally not right. So yeah, Ben, you're right. It's what we do with it.
I'm going to move us along because here's a good question from Good Cop. Good Cop says, Mbulelo, what's the word of the day today? I mean, you were using some pretty large and controversial and not necessarily easy to understand words yesterday. So what's our word for today? Come on. We've already thrown antinatalism into the mix, but I'm sure you can outdo that.
I hadn't really thought of anything because I don't really think of my life that way. But what should we go with? Interlocutor. Interlocutor.
Okay. I like that one. Yes.
Mm.
So that is the person
how you hold a golf club.
you have to cross the fingers at the what is it? Yeah, right.
He's a good driver of the ball because he's an interlocular player.
So the interlocutor is, in the case of the show this morning, my interlocutors are Mbulelo, Ben, and Leigh-Ann. Those are the people that you are engaged with in conversation or in argument or in philosophy. Am I right? Is that more or less the definition we're looking for?
You have nailed it.
So next time you are having a fight with someone, instead of and someone else intervenes and interrupts you while you're enjoying the fight, say to them, "Excuse me, me and my interlocutor were busy. This is not your business." And they'll back right off. They'll be so horrified at the use of that word.
Or to solve a real problem, if you're fighting with your partner and he or she is being unreasonable, say, "Hey, take your thoughts out of there and let's interlocute." That's how you do it.
Very nice. All right, so Mbulelo apparently is a bit of a Hitler on the set of his sports show because he has banned vetkoek. I think that's quite good, though. I mean, a little bit of the
Is that an Afrikaans rapper, or is that a food source? Because there are so many things up in the air in the show right now.
Just tell us what brought about this rule and why you've decided to go all Jawohl, mein Führer on the set of your show.
So if there's one thing I can't stand, it's like fatty, disgusting food smell.
I think there are a lot of things you can't stand. In the short time we've known, the list has gone. In fact, Sia used to keep a list. I think it's still in his office. It's about 17 pages long. But yes?
Yeah, the smell of vetkoek or amakkoek, it's so revolting to me. Like, it's just, all I can smell is a heart attack, right? Like, it's like oily, disgusting. It's like, I'm not having that on my set. You're welcome to eat it. Eat it, not on my set. Get that nonsense the hell out of here. I'm not having disgusting, oily smells on a set where we're trying to talk about sport. Get that out of here. No way. There's no way.
I've mentioned this before, and I know Ben's least favorite smell is the smell of weed. He always says it smells like poverty, which is a quote I often attribute to him.
Well said.
Poverty and really bad choices.
Yeah.
Well said, Ben. I've never heard that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. And you tell people
all yours.
And as long as you give Ben credit, which I always do, I say, yeah, it smells like poverty, and weed smokers are just horrified at that comparison. But the thing that I can't stand the smell of, and that I've banned at Cliff Central, if I'm also going to admit my autocratic tendencies, beef and onion pies from the garage are horribly unacceptable, especially when warmed in a microwave. In an open
you eat them though?
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Because there's some things that smell atrocious, but we eat them.
Yeah. So beef and onion pie is just just horrendous. And if you warm it up for too long in the microwave, that smell will permeate into everything, including everyone else's clothes. It's just a foul, disgusting thing, and that smells of regret and of.
You got to ask the question, like why did onion need to be added? Because if beef is done properly in a pastry of sort of pie setup, it's good enough, right? Because there'll be gravy. Who added the onion?
Sick, fucking twisted people, I'll tell you that.
Onion is a very well-known companion to beef in the culinary world.
It's not vital.
Well, Derek says exactly what I was going to say, is that beef and onion smells like rank armpits, sweaty smell at a rave festival. Yes, that's exactly. Gee, that is such a horrible stink. It's the worst. The worst smell
put you off, right? Like it changes your mood, which is why I'm not having it on the set. It's like all it smells of is, I've made, as Ben has beautifully articulated, I've made bad decisions. If you're eating vetkoek in the morning at 12 o'clock, you've made bad decisions, and I'm not going to have it around me. No way. No chance.
Weed's best smells in the early morning when you cycle past the workers in the Cape Town docks, says Good Cop. All right, well. Sophia says that it smells like regret and divorce. Oh, my God. Divorce has a smell? Oh.
That's awesome.
To me, the smell of divorce is the smell of whiskey.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's a good association.
No. When I got divorced, I was horribly unhappy about the whole thing. And I remember I couldn't drink wine because wine I associated with happy times and celebrations.
Yeah.
So I drank whiskey. And now I associate it with being really depressed and with divorce.
It's amazing how songs also have that value to you. There's some songs that you associate with exes. In fact, I can pretty much draw on the memory of any of my ex-girlfriends, and I can immediately associate a song with each one.
All I need to do is find a VHS recorder and play my wedding video, and then I'll know the songs.
You haven't burnt that?
To be honest, I don't know where it is. In my mind, I'm picturing it in a box, but I don't really know where it is.
Yeah. Some years ago, we had someone warm up tripe in the office microwave, says Derek.
Oh,
that is
holy God.
No.
despicable. Those people should be chased out with whips like the Taliban chased people around Kabul airport.
It's got such a specific smell. Try.
God. I walked past a place when I was on holiday, and the smell of the tripe, I immediately phoned the people who we were renting the place from. I said, we're not going to rent this place anymore. We're going somewhere else. Just because of the smell of tripe. I'm not, that sounds dramatic, but I can find you witnesses to the fact that we did not go there for our holiday. We actually changed.
Totally fair. On the back of these smells and such unruly behavior, I feel like we should all have a Taliban officer in our lives. So if you're at work, right, and you have a pleasant day, someone puts tripe in the microwave, you literally call the Taliban officer, and they come in there and just uncompromisingly hide them all kinds of things. And I think that's the only use of the Taliban, actually. You look at it, because we all have HR people, right? We have HR people who use everything with kid gloves. I think the Taliban should outsource, because like people are trying to freeze their assets right now. They should just outsource Taliban officers to the rest of the world. So when you do step out of line and heat up a beef and onion pie, or arrive with the smell of marijuana around you, the Taliban officer will get to you within 20 minutes, and you'll never do that again.
And he'll come at you with a shambok, and you will never behave like that again. And you know what? In society at the moment, particularly soft societies like the West and supposedly, open liberal democracies, those are the societies where actually, like, if you've got a bunch of college students who are sitting on the lawn eating fast food and complaining about the patriarchy, this Taliban should just come running out of the bushes with a shambok and just completely frighten the bejesus out of them. And they must run, they must scatter, they must realize that they are living this soft, purposeless life, and these guys will keep them on track. I'm telling you, Ben, you're right. Yeah, this is an excellent plan.
You can even brand them like Taliban reality officers. So if you take, for instance, the South African Parliament, right? They're having some sort of shit discussion about something, and Cyril's big hands are waving around. You throw the Taliban reality officer in there, taking people's land, all that kind of shit, whatever they're going to talk about. The Taliban guy comes in there with a whip, but like a cattle whip, a big one for bigger audiences, and he just fucks things up for 20 minutes. At the end of that, everyone will be like, "Okay, guys, look, that was hectic. Let's not go down that road. We don't want the Taliban officer to come back."
And actually, we've been fighting about nonsense. Let's stand together and get this country moving forward, because otherwise, he's the reminder of what will happen if we don't.
And the thing is, because the Taliban officer doesn't know when to stop, you actually have to kill them. So ideally, every situation requires a new one. And then the whole scheme of things is that you ultimately kill the Taliban by the Taliban just disciplining society. It's an incredible win-win situation, really.
It's Taliban bananas.
It's like a Taliban circle of life.
Well, you see, we do ultimately find the silver lining in almost anything, even a horrible story like this week's Afghanistan news. That's what we try to do here on the show for you every morning. All right, Ben, nice to see you. Have an excellent day and good weekend.
All the best. All right, fantastic. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Right? That's that. For some reason, whenever I think of the Taliban, I think of Missy Misdemeanor Elliott in that song. Get your freak on.
Oh,
get
for sure.
Get your freak on. Love
it. Hey, quiet.
Yeah. Quiet, bitch. Shut your mouth. Silence winner. Spit it out. In your face. Open your mouth. Give me your taste. That's how it goes. I used to know all the words. All right, so here's some more revolting things. Good Stuff says, I hate the smell of eggs. It seeps into your dishwater and infects the rest of the cutlery in the dishes.
Oh, yeah. If you put an eggy something in the dishwasher, you're screwed, because you can taste it when you're drinking water out of a glass.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And then 2 comments above that from Duds. Surströmming.
Oh, my God.
Have you watched videos on that?
Leigh-Ann, so my sister and her boyfriend.
No, they didn't.
They thought this was the funniest thing ever. So they showed me the first video, and I remember we talked about it on the show, like when they first exposed me to surströmming. So if you don't know about this, here's the elevator pitch. Surströmming is this disgusting pickled fish.
Rotten.
I think it's herring or something, but it's so rotten and pickled, and it apparently stinks so much and so badly and so nauseatingly that people who are not from Norway or Denmark or Sweden, which we would normally consider civilized countries, the rest of us in the world, they play these games where they open a can of this and they try to not throw up.
But as you put the tin opener on it and you make that first puncture hole, people are already gagging.
And you can go onto YouTube and you can look up surströmming, and you'll see these people trying to not throw up while they eat it. And grown men burst into tears. It's so disgusting. Guys are going, but before they even open the tin, and it's just the most appalling stuff in the world. Now, I don't know if we can even get it in South Africa, and I hope not. But I mean,
we can order anything online.
Oh my God, I wouldn't do it, because what'll happen, right? There'll be a drunk night where someone will go, get the surströmming and let's see who throws it. I don't want to smell that stuff. Just seeing the videos is enough for me. God, it's revolting. Ugh. We have a rule in the office, says Chris. No meat products in the microwave. Fuck smelling warm polony. That's also gross.
Oh, no.
No. Pies are double meals. One goes in and then two come back up in the burp.
Do you remember, I think they've still got them, I don't know, I've never even ventured there, but in the frozen food aisle you got these fish fillets which were inside plastic wrapping, and you would put the whole plastic wrapping fish into your microwave. They would steam in this pocket.
Yes.
And for some reason I timed whatever the time was, I added an extra 0 on it. Okay. And forgot about it and went and did something else. And I had to throw the microwave away. It was haddock. That's right. It was orange.
Oh.
And it got stuck in the vents. And look, when I opened it up, the haddock was black. It was charred. But that stuff got stuck in the vents. No matter how much putting lemon into water bowls, nothing helped.
There's nothing you can do about that smell. Apparently, one of the best ways to get revenge on your ex, if you're a mean, horrible person. I mean, I would never do something like this, but there are some sickos out there who are deeply unhappy about relationships ending and like to take matters into their own hands, create some ugliness. They sew fish into the bottom of a curtain, for example.
Yeah.
And then that person, for the rest of their lives in that house, they can never identify where that smell comes from. Apparently it lasts for years.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Anyway,
Jeez,
I mean, even if it lasted a day, it would be too much for me. I opened up a cupboard the other day, and there's nothing, there's no produce of any kind. It's just, glassware and crockery and Tupperwares and things in this cupboard. But for some reason, there's like a very, almost a chemical smell in that cupboard. And I eventually, I broke open the bottom of it. There's always that kind of place under, just to see where it was coming from. I couldn't find anything. I still don't know what's going on in there.
Like a paint smell?
Like a bit of a paint smell, yeah. I don't know what, and it's not as if it's been painted. But there's something going on there. It's terrible, and I can't figure it out. So I will keep you updated, but that's a project I've got to undertake at some point.
Let's come up quickly with a solution. I think it should be HR's duty, right? Because you know how at offices people think, I'm going to get, I don't know, whatever people eat, chicken licking or whatever, everybody thinks, this is awesome. I've got my meal. I'm going to open it and crack it here where everyone sits. Like crappy food smells disgusting to some of us. Like, I just can't stand the smell of like McDonald's and all of that. You know what I mean? Go and eat somewhere else.
Exactly what you mean. That there should be rules in places where we have to share spaces. And every office has some kind of outside area. Unless you were in a sweatshop in like mainland China, there's no reason for you to not be able to go and eat on the balcony outside. And I know winter's chilly, but most offices also have a kitchen or something. You can't eat your beef and onion pie. First of all, you shouldn't ever have food like that in an office environment. I always feel it's just such an imposition on everyone else. If you arrive with stinky foods or stuff that requires opening of many little dishes and Tupperwares, and like it just becomes so complicated. You don't need to do that. Like,
and it stinks. Like takeaway food stinks.
I remember working at the SABC so many decades ago as a junior journalist, and the key we used to rotate desks. Whichever desk you found, you just worked at. And this one particular day, the keyboard and the phone, the handset of the phone, were covered in like chicken oil.
Oh, God. From KFC, probably.
It ruined my whole day.
Yeah.
So bad. So bad.
Apparently, according to Richard, there's something worse than surströmming. He says a fermented tofu sold in China, known locally as stinky tofu. You can hardly breathe near it. That sounds terrible. That sounds like feet, rotten feet.
It's going down the egg route, that one.
So Msizi says, I don't allow boiling tripe in our house. It stinks and attracts flies. Ugh.
Yeah, it's got a very distinctive smell, and I can't deal with it.
My mom knows when I visit for that weekend, none of that will happen while I'm around. She knows very well. I will not tolerate that. I have left before to my cousin's house, and I will leave. Like, I'm here. I am not. It's your house. I get it. Whatever. You've worked incredibly hard. All right. Congratulations. Sorry, I'm not visiting for that. It is unbearable. Unbearable.
No, I completely agree. All right, here's some headlines. So you know who Lizzo is, right? Lizzo is that extremely fat singer, and she's quite popular because she's supposedly this body positive person. The irony about body positive Lizzo is that she seems to really not be able to handle criticism terribly well. Now, if you're body positive, that means you feel a certain way about yourself and you don't care what other people think. But it appears that Lizzo is extremely sensitive to what other people think, in which case, why is she out there flaunting her enormous ass for everyone to see? You can't have it both ways. Either you are going to put yourself out there and be judged by people and not care if you're body positive, or you're not going to put yourself out there and not have to worry about being judged. But you don't get to have your cake and eat it in this respect. And for her, eating cake is an important part of her life, obviously. The whole cake. So I'm sorry, Lizzo. Forgive me if I don't feel terrifically sorry for you in your misery. She put out this video this week where she's crying about how mean everybody's being to her on social media. But she's the one who... Yes, but she's the one who's written songs about, I don't care about what you think. I'm proud of myself. But so I can only deduce from that she is lying and that she is a dishonest interlocutor, to use your word from earlier. Mbulelo. She is a fake. She is pretending to be confident and body positive, but actually she's a desperately sensitive person who's craving your acceptance and your praise. And when things don't go her way, she breaks down into tears and posts it on social media as a kind of way to tell us that we better comply or she's going to cry, which is, it's that there's an abuse involved in that. I don't have to like you, Lizzo, and I don't have to support your body positivity. And frankly, you shouldn't even be part of my life if you don't want me to judge you. You
but
put
also
yourself
the whole thing is, even if you look beyond someone who's a celebrity or popular like Lizzo, if you can scroll on TikTok any day and you'll find some person crying because they're upset about haters on the internet. Well, have you ever once thought in your life, while you're having a sob for some reason, let me record this and put it out there? I don't know what sort of people it takes to do that.
Well, it's sickness. You see, the greatest part of moral and community and status value is awarded to young people these days by the internet. And so they go onto the internet to get love. And then when they're getting lots of love, it's great. All the dopamine hits are chasing them into heaven. But as soon as they encounter the slightest bit of negativity or criticism, they collapse and fall apart because it feels to them like the end of their world. They're so dependent on the positive that when the negative comes, they have no way of dealing with it. And you can see this, right? This is what happens. So I'm terribly sorry when I have no sympathy for Lizzo. And if people want to cancel me for that, go for it. But Facebook and Instagram, of course, are doing everything they can to help her. They've removed several hateful comments on singer Lizzo's social media accounts. The move comes after the singer spoke tearfully about the hurtful abuse that she'd received there.
What did she expect?
Well, exactly. This is the point, right? There's this unrealistic expectation that everyone must love Lizzo. If you go onto the internet with that expectation, you deserve to be disappointed twice over. First of all, disappointed in the reaction they're giving you that you didn't want. Second of all, in yourself for having sought any kind of interaction with people who are mean.
But put fatness aside. You could be going on to some public platform with any agenda, even if it's about loving Jesus or spreading positivity. People are going to hate. Haters going to hate.
Haters going to hate.
Shout out
that's Taylor Swift, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So let me just show you.
At what age should we disabuse humans? At what age should we be disabusing human beings of the notion that nobody can be mean to you? Like, it's why, I'll keep going on about it and I will die on this hill. I wish more people went to boarding school. Whoa, is that her? Wowzers. She's a healthy girl, hey?
She's an attack buffalo. She is enormous.
Okay.
But Mbulelo, to answer your question, as young as possible, because life is going to be very much harder for them if they only learn this fact much later on. Like if you have reached adulthood, as many young men and women do, without having encountered any criticism, especially from your own parents, you're just a disaster. You're going to have a tremendously unhappy life. Everything is going to be 10 times more challenging for you. And parents who've raised their kids to believe that criticism is something they don't need to encounter, or that difficulty is not on the way, those parents are in dereliction of duty. They are deserving of the punishment that they're about to put their kids through. It's doing them no good at all.
You've nailed it. I really struggle with that notion because in my family, people can raise their families how they want, but like I'm not going to tolerate softness in my family because too many people have paid a price in my family that I know about. So I'm not talking about anyone else. Like I told you, I had to have a strong word with my nephew the other day. Is that I'm not. If you carry our surname, you're not going to be soft. I don't want to hear your. I need to disabuse anyone in my family at a young age of the fact that they deserve anything. I will disabuse it. And whilst my father's alive, it ain't gonna fly.
I think it's this simple. I put myself on this show every day. I know that there are many, many people who like and enjoy what we do and find it entertaining and informative and useful and sometimes even more. That's great. But I also know that there are probably going to be people who absolutely hate us, who think that what we've just said, for example, about Lizzo, is morally reprehensible, and that they might even threaten death. They might even threaten hurting those we love. They might, just because they're angry with us for whatever reason. You take the chance when you put yourself on the stage. You take the chance that someone's going to not like you, and perhaps even wish that you would die in a fire. But you don't get any reward without risk. And Lizzo has been extremely successful. She's made an absolute fortune. She is beloved by far more people than she is hated by. So, honey, count your blessings. And if someone doesn't like the way you look and you are what you say you are, which is body positive, and you're not bothered with people, then how can you have this dissonance between the way you project yourself to be as this confident, positive, successful, independent, strong woman who doesn't care what people think, but you cry on the internet when people are mean to you? You've got to pick a side here. And if your side is, I don't like people being mean to me on the internet, then the advice is get off the internet and get out of the media and get off the stage and stop showing off your ass time you can.
Exactly. What else did you expect?
Much too tight for you. Like dress in much more modest clothing if you don't want people to comment on your saggy backside. But if you do like it and you are positive, do whatever you want and stop worrying about what people think. Those are your only two options, Lizzo. I'm not going to guide you down either path. It's up to you to decide. But I do not in any way deserve to be dragged into your crisis of confidence or your sad, pathetic attempts at getting attention through crying and wailing about how people are so mean, because that's just how the world is. And again, this is where the Taliban officer that Ben spoke about should just come out of the cupboard suddenly and like chase Lizzo around the room until she's thin. Enough already. Some more news. Believe it or not, that was a news story. And Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, who's got the best name to pronounce, especially if you're a white person who can't pronounce those names. She is the new speaker, and she has promised to protect the integrity and decorum of Parliament as opposition parties continue to object to her election. This came moments after she was elected with a huge majority by members of the ANC in the chamber. Mapisa-Nqakula said it was crucial that the three branches of the state maintain their independence, but also collaborate in certain areas. She previously served as chief whip of the ANC. In her speech, she promised to work with all parties and protect the integrity of Parliament. Well, we'll see. She's also just this week apparently been... by the way, she's about Lizzo's size. She this week was supposedly involved in some kind of investigation that's come to the fore where it's alleged that she has spent millions of rands on 5-star hotels and on private jets and on all kinds of... So this is the person we're dealing with. We're dealing with a venal, corrupt politician. We're dealing with precisely what you think. You know, when we talk about pigs at the trough, that's what we're dealing with here. The previous Speaker of Parliament, Thandi Modise, has now taken over Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula's old job. They've just swapped, basically, one incompetent person for another. They've just taken each other's jobs. It's a what in football when they just change the player, but they're both shit. Thandi Modise, speaking of pigs at the trough, was the one who starved her pigs on her farm when they were at the trough. She was found not guilty of that, but it was her farm. She conveniently blamed her farm manager, who's probably going to pay the price ultimately for her. But looking at Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, she's very familiar with troughs. I'm sure that she has one installed in her parliamentary office. And she and Lizzo could probably teach each other quite a lot about eating.
No.
Anyway, we'll see how that goes. So it's a lot of fat phobia on the show this morning. Way too much, right? New Zealand says, hold it, New Zealand's back in our conversation this morning. We really have had a lot to say about New Zealand. They say they've solved the COVID-19 outbreak puzzle. Listen to this. Are you ready? Yeah. New Zealand reported a breakthrough on Thursday in tracing the source of a COVID-19 outbreak that plunged the nation into lockdown. That's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern saying that she would help stamp out the virus. I don't think this woman has any idea of how viruses work if she thinks she can stamp it out.
Plunged.
It's hilarious.
Health officials have been trying to determine how an Auckland man contracted the virus this week, ending a 6-month run of no community cases in New Zealand. Tests showed that the man had a version of the Delta strain found in Australia. Anyway, they've investigated and they narrowed down the origin to a person who arrived from Sydney on the 7th of August. The Prime Minister said the traveller had been in quarantine in hospital since touching down, indicating the virus had not been in the community. We believe we've uncovered a piece of the puzzle that we were looking for. I mean, God, can you imagine being this man? Jacinda Ardern, putting probes in your asshole to find out whether you've still got the virus. And she said finding the outbreak source also increased the ability to circle the virus, lock it down, and stamp it out. She ordered a 3-day national lockdown because of this one case. Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Anyway, this is what's going on. And you know what?
And they don't realize that sometime in their life they're all going to get COVID. It's like flu. You know,
that's right. We have only 2 options. You either learn to live with COVID, and this is for all of us as a species now. We learn to live with COVID, or we go into complete isolation forever. You just don't encounter any other human beings. You live like the boy in the bubble. Those are your only 2 options.
I was watching this video on places that you can't visit. They're banned because of various issues. And the one is this tiny island. I think it's off of South America, where this tribe lives. And anyone who's been there in the last few decades because that's what people do. They try and go and colonize or, tame
interact.
these. Yeah. And
The
they've all been
North
killed.
Sentinelese. Yeah, the North Sentinelese, they're actually in Asia. It's near India.
And there is a video of, it must be of someone on a ship who's approaching the island. And as you get close, all of the islanders come out with their spears and their loincloths. They have not even heard of COVID.
No.
They haven't even heard of, and it brings me to think, is that not the way to live? Is that not like the most blissful life ever? When I say COVID, I mean everything, technology, all the things that we worry about.
Afghanistan, I don't think has vaccinated more than 1% of its population. Nobody's wearing masks. Of course, the women have to wear burqas, but the men don't wear masks. And I don't know that COVID is Afghanistan's biggest problem right now. No. Again, perspective, context,
Yeah.
It'll help you. It'll help you
Shout
figure
out
this
to
out.
There are a bunch of people who are ready to shoot themselves in the head. They are called the virologists, biologists, all of the high-level scientists in New Zealand right now, because there's nothing they can do. That's Jacinda and her cabal. That they've said, what is the best looking thing to do? And the biologists are going, no, let's keep going. Let's just leave it open. She goes, no, it sucks. I got to go.
She's doing this for herself. She wants to be seen to be doing something. She doesn't care about the science. Anyway, look, I mean, let them carry. I feel sorry for all the people who are in New Zealand. That's all. That's I feel sorry for you if you.
They chose to be there. They chose to be there. Please,
well, I feel they can't get out now. That's the problem. Is they can't go anywhere.
They're in a big jail.
Only half the people in Afghanistan are in jail. And locked into the country. The other half can still slip across the borders because it's a ruleless mess of a place. You can't leave New Zealand now if you want to, and you can't get in if you want to, because there is a complete lockdown. Autocracy has taken hold in that place. So go for it. That's, to me, there's no difference right now. You have about as much liberty in New Zealand as you do in Afghanistan. In fact, you probably have less. All right, I'm going to move on because we've got something really cool on this morning. We've been talking about this for weeks now. You know Devilsdorp, right?
Yes.
The show. So Showmax has got an original true crime series which is called Devilsdorp, which is it's based on those 11 Krugersdorp killings that happened between 2012 and 2016. They're known as the appointment murders or the satanic murders. And we're going to speak to the journalist and author of the Krugersdorp Cult Killings. She's the person who actually wrote the screenplay, you could say, for Inside Cecilia Stein's Reign of Terror. She's the woman who was at the head of the cult. Jana Marx is her name, and Jana Marx is going to be our guest in the next hour. So I'm really excited to talk to her about Devilsdorp. And if you have questions, send them to us because I'll ask her whatever you want me to, especially if you have seen the series. I watched a little bit. I gave myself a kind of, what do you call it? Like a breeze through of the series because it's quite a lot to take in and I didn't have time to watch all of it yesterday. But
very, very, very heavy.
Wow. This is insane. And people all over the world are watching it now. You know that it is a new record setter in South Africa. Apparently, the most hours watched in its first 4 days of launch of any film or series ever on Showmax.
Amazing.
So don't tell me that we don't have great stories in South Africa and that we can't make great documentaries in South Africa, because that's proof. This thing has outperformed Game of Thrones and The Real Housewives of Durban. Real Housewives of Durban, do me a favor. But anyway, it's outperformed Game of Thrones for being the most watched show in its first 4 days of launch ever on Showmax, ever in history. Isn't that great?
Isn't it?
It's phenomenal.
It's bittersweet, but I feel very proud. You know?
I think so too.
So, wow. By the way, I cannot wait for that either. But what it has done for me, I'm sure I've told you before, is that my line of where I would go outside of the area I live in And I guess we have lots of people in South Africa who don't know, but there's a line. It was Malibongwe, but it's now really come even tighter. I've sort of brought it around probably to around the end of William Nicol is the end of where I'd want to go from my area, because having watched this is
not to Krugersdorp.
You've shrunk your local area that much because of this Devilsdorp show.
Oh my God. Oh my God. If you haven't seen it, oh my God.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to talk to Jana, because my Satan, really.
It's just
my Satan is the correct. Oh my Satan.
Oh my God. All right.
And I've learned some really amazing things about the Church of Satan in South Africa, and how it is not what you think. But let's get into that.
Well, we'll talk to Jana in the next hour, and we've also got George joining us as always on a Friday for Auto Central. Lots of other good stuff happening. CliffCentral.com. It is the 20th of August.
This week on Auto Central.
Now, the new one is like the old one, but even better. For one thing, the connectivity suite that's available. And then also some other points of interest, or another big point of interest, is the new climate control system, which doesn't operate with rotary knobs anymore. It's all touch slide switches, which is pretty cool.
Catch Auto Central, SA's #1 motoring podcast, every Monday at 9 a.m.
One place on Cliff Central for 80s movie recommendations, obscure 80s references, 80s crushes, and it's the only place on Cliff Central with the best 80s songs you forgot how much you loved. That 80s Show, Fridays, 9 a.m. on Cliff Central. People say we're stuck in the 80s, like it's a bad thing.
put it like wow, this that sound. These oaks don't work hard like me, I hope they know by now.
All right. Good morning. If you've just joined us, cliffcentral.com on a Friday morning. Mbulelo's got a brand new show for you today. And by the way, it's all in HD, so you can see every detail of the set. You can see what's going on Mbulelo's computer. You can, I mean, I watched it on my big screen the other day, and it's so cool. I suppose now there's pressure for us to put this show into HD as well, but then we'll need HD cameras everywhere because that's what you've got, right?
We got some 6K cameras actually, so we'll turn it right up. Oh, we're not playing. Cliff Central's not playing now. Cliff Central, nice. We as a company, we're not playing, and it's been
speaking
awesome.
speaking of new shows and things that are going on in shows, we have a brand new show on Cliff Central, Life with Lebang, which started yesterday. You know Lebang, who was on the show on Wednesday here, and someone I introduced to you about 2 weeks ago. She's on fire. So not only has she joined Cliff Central in an official capacity, where she's going to be handling a lot of our creative stuff, but she's also got her own show. And I encourage you to listen to it. It's called Life with Lebang. She says, when life gives you lemons, blah, blah, kumbaya. Consider her show a safe space if that's what you're into. You can join her as she talks about everyday conversations and situations, but in a not so conventional way. You can listen live at 11 on a Thursday, or you can get the podcast at cliffcentral.com on the Cliff Central app or Spotify or wherever you listen. So go and do that ASAP, and you can find Lebang's new show. See, we're bringing back some new shows. We're bringing back live shows, and it's starting to happen. But we're being very picky about what we put on. So there's Cliff Central Sport for you with Mbulelo. There's Life with Lebang, and there are a couple other really good shows you can listen to on cliffcentral.com. All right, Leigh-Ann Moll's here. Mbulelo's here. I'm here, and you are here. That's all that matters this morning. We've got this incredible story of the Devilsdorp documentary, which we're going to talk about in a short while. Apparently, it's taking over all over the place. I just want to refer quickly to something that came up yesterday while we were talking with Pumi. And this is about the discussion we were having about people who emigrated from South Africa in the early 90s and how many of them only left for, racist reasons. I know that that's not true for everybody, so don't think I'm talking about you if it's not you. That's on you if you take it on. But here's the story. So I got an email from Steve. He says, towards the end of last year, I moved to the UK with my fiance. I'm 27 years old. And Steve says, I was recently talking with a family that had moved here about 15 years ago about their generation of the South African community in the UK. They told me that naturally when they arrived on foreign soil, they sought out fellow South Africans and would even invite them over for a braai, even if they'd just met on a train. This exercise was an eye-opener, as 90% of the families that came were hardcore racists that left South Africa for that very reason. This is Steve's story about this other family. Fast forward to today, and he says he reckons 99% of the people that are in his generation that he's met in the UK have emigrated for the following reasons, in this order. Are you ready? Number one, they want to be able to travel in and out of Europe easily. I understand that. Number two, career opportunities. Just finding a job is much easier there. Number three is career progression. In other words, you've started something, but you want to be able to progress to the next level, and that wasn't available to them in South Africa or perhaps in other countries too. Number four, financial reasons. Number five, avoidance of crime. He says, I've not come across any person who's moved due to racism. I don't know whether there are fewer racists in younger generations or we're just better at holding our tongues, but I certainly think it is the former. I think most of us are emigrating for healthy reasons and positive ones, and it's been refreshing to note this contrast. So I just thought I'd bring that up because we talked about it yesterday, and I think there is a huge difference. Steve, I completely agree with you in terms of the people I know who've moved, who've emigrated, who've decided to change their lives, whether it was from or to South Africa, and I completely concur with everything that you've just said. So I'm glad we got this email from Steve. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been a change. And I mean, I speak from experience in that as well, where a lot of my family, my dad's side of the family, immigrated a long time ago. I'm talking 20 years ago.
Right.
And those reasons were definitely crime related because they'd all been victims of crime, but mainly because of their business, which had reached its peak here. However, when they started it up overseas, it did suffer. It's a different ball game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we posted that link after I spoke about that documentary yesterday. You might want to go and see that as well. We're going to talk Devilsdorp in a minute or two, and Jana Marx will be our guest. She's the author of the book based on the investigation into these incredible killings, and we'll find out from her how it turned into a documentary. I mean, many people are saying they didn't really care about Showmax until this, and now they suddenly or Krugersdorp. Yeah, lots of people saying Krugersdorp can miss me. I have no reason to go there. Apparently, listen to this. This is pretty wild. My husband, says Brigitte, went to Krugersdorp High, and they used to call it Krugerfornia. 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 That is a hard one to say. Imagine being drunk trying to say Krugerfornia.
Excellent, Krugerfornia. That's awesome.
Yeah. Or if you use it in its purest accent, it would be Krugerfornia.
Ja, lekker daar by Krugerfornia.
Yeah, I've never been to Krugersdorp, hey?
What?
Oh, really?
Never, no.
Fantastic.
What's wrong with you?
Fantastic.
Please,
you are not missing anything. You're not.
It's the first time.
How do you know, Mbulelo? You've been there?
No, well, my aunt. I told you, my aunt lives in Eagle Canyon. Eagle Canyon's kind of. But as far as I'm concerned, yeah, and also we had to play cricket once against Krugersdorp High, so it was. But I've never voluntarily gone to Krugersdorp. No. I've
had lots of friends who live in Krugersdorp, and also I've mentioned quite often that fantastic fancy dress shop, which is it's just a fantasy world, which it's built to look like a castle, and it's just in some random main street in Krugersdorp West. But Krugersdorp West is like really hitting the boundary, and it's the first time that yes,
Krugersdorp West is even first. You have to go through Krugersdorp to get to Krugersdorp West,
and it's the first time I saw a bakuzi. And I was driving behind it. I was on my way to the fancy dress shop, and there was a gigantically obese mom and daughter in the back of the bakkie, which was lined with plastic and filled with water. And they were just chilling in the bakuzi.
Bakuzi, that's so... a bakuzi in Krugerfornia. Yes, that's
Leigh-Ann, I must tell you. Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by that, because having heard all of your incredible stories from your life, I would have thought Bathurst would have been a part of your childhood. I don't know if you've ever been to Oxbrae before. Did you ever go to Oxbrae?
No, I haven't. It's one place.
I'm very surprised by that. Yeah, because for those who don't know, Oxbrae, the party of all parties. If you are between the ages of 18 and 23, Bathurst, Oxbrae. Bakuzi's everywhere there.
What happens is that Bakuzi Central when you've been? Tell us, because I've never been to Oxbrae either. So give us the lowdown.
So at Oxbrae, you kind of drive into this field, right? That's meant to be like a big. Think of it as a festival. So you drive into a field. You can't leave. So it's very much like New Zealand, really. It's a mix between Afghanistan and New Zealand.
And this is in Bathurst.
Yeah, in Bathurst. So you drive in there, music's pumping, the Oaks and the Betties are out there, the shirts come off, sun's out, guns out, sun's out, buns out. And then, the Bakuzis are everywhere. So you can set up your car, you can have all of your own stuff, you pay for a ticket, and then you all eat the spit braai when it's ready. And it's just music and debauchery for 24 hours, and then you can leave the next morning.
Carolyn says I'm lying. She says, Gareth, you're lying. I remember seeing you at you were DJing at the local news cafe in Krugersdorp. You know what,
Gareth.
I think you might be right.
Integrity.
No, I forgot. I mean, I obviously put it out of my mind.
Trauma. It's the trauma that they say. Traumatic events. Yeah.
I have this. Listen, I'm not gonna bullshit you. I have this unique ability to be able to forget unsavory and unpleasant experiences. I forget them. I forget if you and I had
I'm exactly the same.
If you and I had a fight,
remind me.
Yeah. And we really said terrible things to each other, and there was maybe even a bit of violence. I would not remember it by tomorrow, and I'd be as normal as I am now with you. It's weird. It just gets stored in some file in a vault in my head, and it just doesn't get opened again. It just gets put in there. There's some experience, obviously, so I learn from it, and then it just gets shelved, and it never gets revisited. I'm not one of those people who dwells on bad experiences. And maybe it's a survival technique. Maybe I'm avoiding stuff. I don't know. But it gets put away. Don't deal with it.
But that's not on you.
No, but maybe that would have helped me if I had been in Krugersdorp during this unbelievable story. And really, I've been excited to talk to Jana for such a long time now, because this documentary is just a runaway success. So in case you don't know what we're talking about, there's this brilliant series. It's the first Showmax original true crime series that they've ever had, Devilsdorp, and it has broken records. It's been watched more in its first 4 days of launch than Game of Thrones was watched, or any of the other local shows that have been put on. And it is just unbelievable. It's a 4-part series. It investigates the 11 Krugersdorp killings that happened between 2012 and 2016, separately known as the appointment murders and the satanic murders, and how they were all traced back to this one woman, Cecilia Stain. And she was the head of the Electus per Deus, which is the Chosen by God cult. So we're joined this morning by the journalist and author of the Krugersdorp Cult Killings, Inside Cecilia Stain's Reign of Terror. Her name is Jana Marx, and she joins us this morning. She also narrates the series, and she's here. First of all, thanks for your time. I believe there are just a ton of people who are chasing you at the moment to get interviews. You've been really in demand. You've been so busy. Well done, Jana.
Good morning, Gareth and team. No, it's a wonderful opportunity to be here. I've been busy. Yeah, I've been extremely busy. I say my biggest regret these past few weeks is not putting in leave at work to actually do this, But I mean, who would have known? I think we wanted the good positive public response, but I think no one expected this explosion.
But what a story. I mean, listen, this is the kind of story that some journalists wait their whole lives to be able to have. It's got all the elements that you need to make people sit up and take notice. There's a bit of Satanism, there's murder, there's abuse, there's, the violence, there's all the stuff that would make people think this can't be true. This is like the script of a bad 90s horror movie. But it's all true. And you were actually there to witness all of it. You've met the people involved in this. What an unbelievable inside track you've had. How do you feel when you go to sleep at night? Are you scared?
No, I won't say I'm scared. I've been a bit freaked out while I work through the dockets. Just to give you an idea, the footage you see on Devilsdorp and the pictures you see in the book, we've already filtered them. There are just some things we can't show people. Otherwise, we have to increase the age restriction. So that there was a time while I was working through the police dockets, looking at these photos, when I had a bit of trouble sleeping. But for me to understand the story and for me to be able to recreate the scenes and exactly understand what happened there, what went on in people's minds at that point, I needed to study those photos as, I think last time I've studied so hard was matric.
So just tell us quickly, because I'm trying to understand it from your point of view, because you're telling all of us the story. But how did you actually get involved in this story? How did you become the person who was in charge of reporting on this, and who eventually, obviously, wrote what was a screenplay for a documentary? How did this happen?
I've been a court journalist at that time, so people want the fabulous story of how this became my case. There's no such story, because it was one of the many cases on my diary. But I usually get the indictment beforehand, and I work through it the previous night just to know what I'm getting into if I attend a new case the following day. And while I was reading through this, it was about 40 pages of indictment. I realized this is a mess. This is a complete mess. And I remember I've just finished a case. It was actually about child abuse, and I thought, oh my goodness, it can't really get worse than that. And then I met Cecilia Stain.
Jesus. So yes. First time you met her, we've got to hear about that.
Yeah, so I started to attend the case the moment it was transferred from the lower court to the high court. Obviously you see her in court, you make eye contact, you're not really allowed to speak to them as a journalist. Obviously they're represented by the legal counsel, but you all try to get a word in here or there just to see how this person is. When I actually met her was downstairs, the court had the holding cells below. And I accompanied her parents when they went down during a lunch break to quickly go and visit her. So, yeah, that's when we actually formally met. Hi, Jan. Hi, Cecilia. I'm Jana.
And what did she say? And how did she appear to you? And what were you looking for? Because you already knew what she'd supposedly been involved in and what we've subsequently found out she was very much involved in. What was it like meeting her, and what were your first impressions? What did you take away from that meeting and subsequent ones?
I was very unimpressed, and I know she will hate to hear this, but I really was. For a cult mastermind,
yes,
to have the defense that she had absolutely no defense. She didn't come to court ready to fight these charges. Her defense was one of denial. I can't remember. I wasn't present. One of my other personalities was surfacing at that point, so I didn't really know what was going on there. I mean, that's not how a clever cult mastermind operates. That was what actually went through my mind. And when I met her in the holding cells, she spoke to me as if she's never seen me, but we've been in court for about 30 days before that. She's like,
almost like,
it was like unamused, indifferent.
But also like a little bit disconnected, right?
I think so, but it's also part of the game. She wants to be in charge. She wants to drive the narrative. The fact that I'm a journalist and now I'm writing the story, she doesn't like that because I'm writing what I'm hearing, and that doesn't correspond what she wants me to believe. So I'm not her favorite person.
But you'd almost think that if she was as clever as so many people said she was, to have created this cult and to have got all these people doing her bidding, you'd think that she would be smart enough to realize, like, you're the one who's going to tell her story. So the person she needs to keep the closest and let in on all the secrets is you. But you say she doesn't like you.
She doesn't like me, no. And I realized, I had an opportunity to talk to her, to actually get an interview with her. But at that stage, I was writing the book, and it was a factual series of events. I realized from her testimony in court, she's not going to contribute anything worthwhile for me for the book. So I just decided, if I ever want to interview a serial killer, I will contact her. I know how to reach her. But for the cases for the facts of this case, I really don't need her input. We all know what she did.
Jeez. All right. So let's get into this. I mean, do you really think it was the work of Satan? Do you think that this had any satanic seriousness to it? Or do you think that this was just a bunch of psychopaths who had strong religious beliefs? And do you think that she was just good at manipulating people? Remember in the 1980s and 90s, there was this satanic panic in South Africa. Everybody thought there were Satanists everywhere and they were sacrificing cats and people. And it was mostly bullshit. Do you think that this was mostly bullshit, or do you think that that was the cover that they used to make it sound really nefarious and insidious and dangerous?
I even want to go one step back. Cecilia didn't even fabricate her own version of Satanism. That's the thing. She used the cover of Satanism. She used the cover of Christianity. But even people that belong to the Satanic Church or people that belong to the Christian Church will not be able to associate with whatever she preached and believed. And it was actually very interesting when I did my research. So I started to Google because I want to know. I know there are different bodies, or maybe I don't want to say sects, but versions of Satanism.
Right.
And I want to know where does she fit in? So I started to Google, and I just realized, but she's nowhere. She took a little bit of this, a little bit of that. There's a bit of Hinduism there. There's a bit of extremist, like Islamic beliefs there. There's a bit of abuse of Christianity in there. And she's just fabricated whatever she called Satanism and fabricated whatever she called Christianity to suit her purpose. There was absolutely no true religion, or as people know, religion or religion people belongs to in this story.
But it worked to lure people in, and it also worked obviously in making the story that much more saucy, right? Because it adds that occult element, which is just, for some people, that's way more interesting than the actual murders.
Yeah, and that also makes it a bit more difficult to distinguish between the facts and the nonsense. And that's actually something a prosecutor or a note he made in court. He said the moment you pour religious sauce over crimes, things become muddy. So he himself, he's a Christian, and he just said, I'm not going to let belief get into anything of this. Religion get into anything of this. This is cold-blooded murders, and we are going to prosecute cold-blooded murders.
And why was she? I mean, if you boil it down, it turns out that this is really just a revenge plot that just went on way too long and that got way too complicated. I mean, it's not as sexy as this woman, this Cecilia Steyn, wanted it to sound. And she's not some mastermind, and this isn't some, modern day revelation of some ancient religious nonsense. It's actually just a pathetic human being who decided to take revenge just a step too far, and a few more steps beyond that even. Is that a fair is that a fair kind of synopsis of what really went on here? Explain to us what the revenge was. I mean, like, go back to the beginning.
Yeah, that's my view. And I just want to add to that, Gareth, before I go back to the beginning. If you look at Cecilia's strategy, I mean, we've all watched the Charles Manson docu's or the Sons of Sam, David Berkowitz. If you actually go back now, after you watch Devilsdorp and you go watch those docu's again, you'll see, oh my goodness, this looks familiar. This looks familiar. So even her cult was this made up thing from other people's cults. just showing how
badly cobbled together.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
She was picking and choosing stuff to make it sound more exciting than it was. But who was the revenge against in the beginning, and what happened in her life to turn her into this?
So Cecilia had this mentor called Ria Grunewald, and Ria at that stage had her own ministry, and that ministry worked with what she called recovered Satanists or survivors. So if someone was in the Satanic Church and they wanted to get out of it, for whatever reason, then Ria and her group was there to just welcome them and help them. And it's just this whole recovering to Christianity, from Satan to God, that whole journey. So that was where Ria fit in. So when Cecilia crossed the path, I mean, Ria thought, oh my goodness, like one of the witnesses called it was Ria's trophy moment. This was the one big case in her life that she really can make a difference or really can assist out of the cult. I mean, Cecilia professed to be the bride of Satan. So there isn't a higher rank Satanist than except for Satan himself.
Right.
So Ria thought, okay, this was something special. This person must be extremely special if God wants to save the bride of Satan. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And then they started to walk the journey, and Cecilia became very involved in Ria's ministry, up to a point where Ria's whole life centered around Cecilia. Because Cecilia, part of her whole game or her story was that she needed protection, as she was this important witch in her prior life. She now needed all the protection she could get to not go back, to not be drawn back into the claws of Satan. So that's where Ria fit in. And at a point there, it fell out because Ria just realized this woman can't consume my life. I need to still earn income, because Ria was literally in her house, like almost 24/7. She couldn't really do anything else.
There was a toxic codependency that developed. Yeah,
no, absolutely. So Ria just decided, okay, I need to get some distance between us. And Cecilia didn't take that well. And she retaliated. That's actually what she did. So she decided she wanted to hurt Ria, but you can't hurt someone if you kill her. So the best way to hurt her is to actually hurt people around her. So that's where the revenge came in.
Jesus. So the people that she brainwashed to commit all these murders, those people seem like they're really, really dumb and gullible, if you ask me. And having seen the documentary too, the little bits that I have seen, because I've got 2 episodes to go. But these people who did her dirty work, how much of this was just a bunch of bored people who had nothing going on in their lives? They were just looking for attention.
That's what's actually so interesting. Not everyone has a low intellectual level there. You have Zach Valentine, for example. I mean, he's absolutely brilliant. He studied actual sciences. He at that stage he was making a lot of money working for an insurer, and he was a clever guy. So it almost doesn't make sense how he fall for something like that.
Let's be fair. Insurance and Satanism have always been bedfellows. So, all right, tell me about this Valentine guy.
Yeah. So Valentine is the one guy, when I started to do my research, everyone, if I look at the members of the cult, there is something, we won't always know what led to them, doing what they did at the end, but there were always something I thought, okay, this might have been a trigger, or this might have contributed to whatever, what to them becoming killers afterwards, or later in the game. But Zach Valentine, if you speak to his friends, they will just tell me like one after the other, we can't believe it. Not Zach, not this nice guy. He was the guy that you would call university. You had a few drinks, you needed someone to pick you up. He's the one you will call. Or the one you will call to drop in at 3 a.m. before you go home, just to get a bit sober so you can show you can go home the proper way. So he was that guy. He got very, very good marks for all his subjects. There's actually nothing there that shows me, okay, yeah, something was off. Something was off. So yeah, it makes sense now.
I hate this. I don't watch a lot of crime and investigation stuff, but it always irritates me that we can never link up the way someone behaved before they became a psychopathic killer and the way they become afterwards. It's always so frustrating to me that we don't have any telltale signs. And what you're telling me about this guy is there was no telltale sign here too. How did he end up being a servant of this Cecilia Steyn woman?
He was gullible. That's the one thing all of his friends agreed on. And not even gullible, but he had like a craving for attention and to be part of a group, because he was always kind of the academic loner. He had a lot of friends, but he wasn't the cool guy. So he wanted approval, and I just think Celia gave him this ground to grow all of his insecurities, and she played him in that way. And in such a way that, he was part of the killing of his wife. So it's, it didn't even become worse. It became like the worst actual example of a serial killer that you can imagine.
Now, what about all these cops? This I found interesting because I didn't know about this until the documentary either. All these cops who helped to cover up the crimes for her, they were also influenced so heavily by Cecilia, right?
These cops are actually now under investigation. I'm like sitting on the point of my chair to listen to what's going to come out of this. The police did investigate charges of defeating the ends of justice. So the police investigated their own. Their anti-corruption unit investigated the 4 members. And defeating the ends of justice is the one charge, and the other one is being accessory after the fact, which would mean that being alleged that they covered up the crimes. The docket has been handed over to the MPA. The MPA has to decide on prosecution, but the MPA told me on Friday that they are not quite ready to make a decision. They still need more evidence for the investigation, for the docket. But it's a good sign. At least they're working on it.
But it is ongoing, and somehow she managed to get these cops to help her cover things up. You think when people go missing and they've been killed, you'd think there'd be more of a fuss made. You think there's something odd going on in Krugersdorp? Do you think Krugersdorp's a strange place?
Could this have happened anywhere, or could it only have happened in Krugersdorp?
Isn't the Krugersdorp specific killing spree?
I see there's a lot of jokes about Krugersdorp going on. The one TV channel is actually renaming Krugersdorp since this morning, so it's quite funny. But I grew up in Bloemfontein, and I can tell you that even there you can see it's the same kind of community, very Afrikaans, very religious. So I don't really think it's a Krugersdorp thing, as it's more of a Kleindorpie thing.
Yeah. And more of a cultural, wherever there's huge conservatism and maybe a huge amount of religiosity, there tends also to be an enormous desire to rebel among certain people in those communities. And rebelling in the most extreme form for a Christian would be to become a Satanist. And rebelling in the most extreme form for a conservative Afrikaans person would be to, become an arch-liberal, completely embarrassing to the community kind of outlier. And maybe that's something that we need to explore in terms of culture in this country. It's definitely interesting. All right, so one of the most chilling aspects of the story is how the children of Marinda Steyn were dragged into this And maybe you can a little bit about that behind the scenes and what stuff you had to leave out of the documentary even about that, because that's some scary stuff that happened there.
Yeah, the children were very small when Marinda became friends with Cecilia. And obviously, it's a thing, if your mom goes to Bible study, then you'll go along. At that stage, Marinda wasn't married. She's been married 3 times to that point. So the children were living with her. She was she had sole custody, yeah. And the children they grew up with Cecilia. They even testified, that she was like a second mom. Marinda, Cecilia also played the role of discipline and all that. So it wasn't even strange for Marinda when Marcel turned 14. It was actually quite shocking that Marinda decided, okay, you know what, Marcel, this is now my. I feel like there's a Bible story with Hannah, with the little child Samuel, and then she dedicates Samuel to Eli to grow up in the tabernacle. Now that's exactly how Marinda saw Cecilia as Eli, and she gave Marcel up to go and stay with Cecilia. So Marcel became the housekeeper. She looked after the children. She did the homework. She cooked. This 14-year-old girl that was supposed to be in school, and she still got 6 distinctions in matric, which just shows how amazingly intellectual she is. But yeah, I think there are actually 2 parts to this. People have a lot of sympathy with the children because, I mean, what can you do if you're small, you're being dragged into these things against your will, or you maybe don't know of any better. And we know that they were isolated, they didn't have any friends, they weren't allowed to take friends home and all that. But I do have a very strong position on this. Eventually, those children grew up. And the children, LaRue is just a few years younger than me. And I remember even when I was still in school, we were constantly told, if you have a problem, you can talk to this teacher. If you have a problem with this, you can talk to that teacher. If you don't feel comfortable, there's the school psychologist. So that was the defense of the children, especially Marcel. She was too scared. She couldn't talk to anyone. That's what she told the court. But yeah, I have a lot of sympathy for the children being small, but eventually they grew up. And at some point you realize this is not shoplifting. People are losing their lives. And if you know right from wrong, you have to do something about this. You can't just go along.
When you've been around people who've done these heinous things and you've seen how many lives have been ruined by the madness of this cult and of Cecilia and Marinda and all of this stuff, what do you think evil really is? Because we all have a definition of evil in our heads. We all like, well, it's someone who's so selfish that they don't care who they hurt along the way. Or evil is something mysterious and religious and something ancient that is the opposite of good. How do you define evil, especially having been around these people?
I think evil can translate in the way of killing. It's one thing to shoot someone. It's cold. It's it's far. It's distant. These people decided to kill people with a knife, to stab people 60, 70 times. So I think it can be translated in the way crimes are committed. But I also think the ultimate evil is what Zak did, to kill your wife, to kill the person that dedicated her life to you. It's not someone far away. It's not you're not gaining in any way. You're not gaining financially. You are not even gaining what Cecilia is gaining, which is that personal revenge satisfaction. I just think there's just no excuse for that. There's no, the killings are senseless on a whole new level for me.
And Jana, when you think about the story and all the things that you've witnessed, what is the most disturbing part of that for you? Are there still things about it that keep you up? Are there still things about it that you can't get out of your head? Being able to do a documentary like this is a tremendous cathartic experience, I'm sure. Writing the book was something very helpful in dealing with this, and for everyone else to deal with it too, because we we tend to think we're in a modern society. These sorts of things don't happen. You know, they happen in Hollywood, or they happen in like very weird parts of the world where people are a little isolated from them. This is just a few kilometers to the west of Johannesburg. This is close for many of us. The fact that this was going on while all of us were just going about our daily business is frightening. So are there things about it that still bug you now?
That's exactly what you said. I think that's the big thing. What makes the story so bizarre and so relatable to so many people. Coming from Bloemfontein, I thought, evil lies in the outskirts. You trust your teacher with your life. You trust your gym instructor with your life. And suddenly, I just think this case made me realize crime is amongst us. It's not something, even in South Africa, it's not something that's out there. It's not something that I can live far from and not cross paths with. I need to be vigilant. I need to not be paranoid though, but I need to be aware. And I think this is the times that we live in. We're going to see a lot more of these things. And the second thing is the religion part. The fact that we have so many cult groups. I mean, Cecilia Steyn, they went to extremes to kill people. But you remember the Doom Prophet, the guy that sprayed the insect repellent in the congregants' faces, and the angels' ministries and all that. We have a huge problem in South Africa with unregulated cults, because they are cults, or they call themselves independent churches. So we really need to do something about this, because this is creeping. It's coming closer and closer and closer. It's not out there anymore. These people, they walk amongst us.
It's frightening. Leigh-Ann and Mbulelo, you've seen the series as well. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff you want to ask Jana. This is your chance. She's in huge demand at the moment. She's doing interviews with people all over the world, and she's done such a great job with this documentary. Of course, it's not just her, but she does narrate it, and she did write the book. So there's a whole team of people that we've also got to give credit to for an incredible show.
I just want to be a voice of the people, and just looking at the comments that we're receiving, there are a lot of people who are fascinated with the journalist who fell in love with LaRue, and have many questions about if they're still together, how it happened. And I think what people's fascination about it is, it's almost as if you question yourself and you say, but could that have happened to me? Am I that vulnerable?
Isn't that the same question that people ask who, if they look at the victims, the realtor, financial advisor, that could have been me. I'm a journalist that pitch up for meetings all the time. I meet people at strange places. That could have been me.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only thing go ahead, Leigh-Ann.
So, I mean, do you know what's happened since with the journalist?
Yeah. She revealed in a report that she's not together with LaRue anymore. But I do tell people, and that's literally just from professional courtesy, we are colleagues in the industry. So I prefer not to comment on her story specifically.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's interesting.
I don't really have have any questions. I just hope you don't live in Krugersdorp. That's
I don't.
All I've got. Oh, okay. Thank God. That's phenomenal. Good for you.
You visited a lot of these places, and obviously in putting the documentary together, you had to revisit a number of things about the case. Were there any really strange things that happened as a result of that? Was there new evidence discovered? Were there funny things that you saw that you hadn't seen before?
I think what's really interesting is, while I was writing the book, I didn't speak to the insurance company that was involved with this fraud. But if you watch the documentary, he had a very elaborate contribution to the docu, which was extremely interesting. And one thing is, actually, the director shared this with me because he was there interviewing Shane. And he said at one point, Shane just casually mentioned that, he was doing the interview with Cecilia in the Kusana flats, and then he just went outside. He said he wanted to go get something in the car. But actually, this guy was so good. He was actually looking around for CCTV cameras to see if he can get any more evidence, because he realized, oh my goodness, something is not right. And I can imagine him knowing that something is off. He wanted to make sure that he's being watched while being there. I mean, we later discovered that people were killed in that very apartment block.
Are there people living in those flats now?
Yeah.
Oh,
we actually, we actually visited them. It was probably a year ago. I took the cop, the investigative officer, with me so he can do the introduction. And the people living in Cecilia's very flat didn't even know what happened there. I don't think they appreciate us that shared whatever happened there. But at least they know now. I think people should know.
Ignorance. Well, people should know. I mean, they probably wouldn't have chosen to stay there if they'd known. So Vince asked you, why did they never bother covering up their murders? They left tracks shamelessly all over the place. What do you say to that?
Amateurs. They wanted to. They had a plan. For example, don't shoot people. We don't leave ballistic evidence. And then Marinda will go and accidentally, out of shock, shoot someone in the stomach. So no, it's just amateur moves. That's all.
Yeah, there are lots of people who are very interested in the circumstances and the capabilities these people have for evil. But the most ugly thing about it, I suppose, is that you can't hide these things, and ultimately it will all come out. And it sounds so much worse when you have to retell it. And to do this documentary, you must have had a pretty tough time deciding what to keep in and what to leave out. Because there's so much story. Like you can't fit it all in. Even in a 4-piece series, you have to leave some stuff on the floor.
I think the one main purpose or motivation for the documentary is to tell the victim stories. Yes, Cecilia plays a very, very big role in all of it. We all know that. But there was a very definite decision to not interview them. We could, the production team could. I mean, it was COVID times, but they could apply with court and all that. But we realized, this is the victim stories. We want to tell the story factually, correct, accurate. And Cecilia, again, is not going to contribute she's not going to contribute with anything worth adding to the facts. So we decided we're not going to give them that attention that they crave. We're going to focus on the story as it is. And quite frankly, I know they will not be happy about it, which makes me very happy because we don't want to give them satisfaction at all.
So what's
Jana, a personal question? Sorry.
Before you go, Mbulelo, what's the latest on Cecilia? Where's she in jail at the moment, and what's she up to?
Cecilia and Marinda are both in Sun City Prison. That's the Johannesburg Central Prison in the old CMAX. That's what they call the section. The guys are there as well, Leroux and Zach Valentine. Marcel is not in a prison with them. I know where she is, but she's been transferred because her mother threatened to kill her. Nice. That's hectic. So she had to be transferred. But apparently, Cecilia is now running her own little, I don't want to say cell group, no pun intended, but counseling group in prison. So she's informally counseling people. And that makes me extremely worried because you can imagine she won't see the outside world in her life again, but many people will. And they will leave prison with Cecilia on their mind. So that's quite worrisome.
It's unbelievable. Go ahead, Mbulelo. I interrupted you.
Jana, just with you sort of doing this kind of work, a friend of mine who's a lawyer says he's starting to enjoy his work less and less because nobody calls a lawyer when things are going well. And so for you, is that when you keep having to kind of do the sort of research and it is your job, do you lose faith in humanity, or are you able to still write your stories from a sort of neutral point of view? And I guess that's a professionalism thing, but just on a personal note, as a storyteller, are you still able to see the best in mankind so that you can write the stories sort of objectively, or does it sort of I don't want to talk to anyone anywhere.
Now, I think we get a lot of exposure to many different kinds of stories. It's not only crime and death and murder and Krugersdorp killings and all that. So, and even in the position I am now working, I'm an in-depth reporter. So I do more analytical, more longer pieces, more in-depth pieces. So sometimes I won't focus on crime and I will focus on, I don't know, it's maybe a great new experiment in COVID science or whatever. So I try to, and I pitch my stories to keep that balance exactly for that reason. I mean, I don't want to be confronted with all the negative stuff the whole time, but I don't always see it as negative as well. Sorry, Gareth. I see it as my purpose to inform people. So I can be angry at the anti-vaxxers, or I can decide to write an informative piece and maybe 3 people will change their minds and then my job is done.
Jean says we need a Devilsdorp 2, an interview of Mirinda and her kids. I mean, there are people asking for all kinds of things here. Just quickly, Gary says this. Gary says, how did they choose my colleague, Hanneli? So obviously Hanneli, one of the victims.
Yeah. Also very, very sad. And like I've said, the census list of these killings. You know, Mirinda paged through the newspaper and saw, oh, there's a Remax ad. Let's call this lady. She didn't know her from a bar of soap. She just called. It could have been you and me.
Sure.
Scary. Listen, well done. I mean, all I can say is congratulations on putting an absolutely insane story together and helping us to understand, or at least to try to understand, the madness that goes on in plain sight, and with people that are randomly walking past you in the shops. Who knows that some of us haven't met Cecilia or walked past her or, driven past her flat. Who knows? And to have known that all of this craziness was happening there and then, it's just very, very scary.
And just the fact that it would have always just been bits of the story, which were swept under the carpet and lost in the noise of news that we hear every day. And I have so much respect for someone who sits and pieces all of that together and takes out a huge chunk of their life, and it can affect your mental health too, to sit there and piece together everything and make it into something that'll try to help people understand what happened. I think it's amazing and huge respect.
I have to applaud Captain Ben Boyson. I mean, he did an amazing job after all the issues with the investigation. He just came and he took over everyone's dockets and he solved this case. I mean, he's kind of like Superman in my eyes.
We give the police such a hard time in this country, but we have some incredibly, incredibly talented and hardworking police people. Listen, Jana, congrats. We could talk to you all morning, but we've got to go, and I know you do too. Keep doing the good work.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Gareth.
Thank you.
Bye.
Jana Marx, who's the author of the book, which if you haven't already looked at, you need to check that out, first of all, as the first stop, the Krugersdorp Cult Killings, Inside Cecilia Stein's Reign of Terror. That's Jana Marx. She's also the narrator of the series. We're joined now by George, who has never been to the West Rand either. So, George, you can't add anything to these killings. You've never been to the West Rand, have you? You're on the East Rand.
I've been there, got a few customers there, but I don't go there unless I have
to. All right, so what's happening, George? What's on your agenda for this Friday morning?
Got a few staff that live there. Got to wonder now.
You're lucky they're still around after Cecilia Stein. All right, so what do we got going on today?
So, Gareth, car companies traditionally for the last 100 years have created cars that you buy. You buy the features when you buy the car. So, for instance, if you wanted in the past electric windows, you bought it when you ordered the car and you got electric windows. Or, there were days where you could have an optional extra called an aircon. I don't know if you remember when cars without aircons.
I used to have a Golf, City Golf, or a Chico, or whatever they were called. And there was no aircon in there. If you were warm in your car in the summer, you had to open the windows, for God's sake.
Exactly. And in Joburg's heat, it can get a little bit hair-raising. But
even power steering was an option.
That's true. I remember the Golf Chicos with no power steering. But in today's world, car companies are starting to become more and more platform businesses. Now, if you go and look at my YouTube account or my Instagram account, I talk about platform businesses and businesses wanting to become subscription businesses. Cliff Central is a platform business, and most businesses want to become that. Auto Trader is a platform business and a subscription business. So. so now cars are becoming platform and subscription businesses in the following way. So the Model 3 comes equipped, the Tesla Model 3 comes equipped with a long-range battery pack. All of them are equipped with long-range battery packs. And you can order software updates by paying a subscription annually that you didn't pay for at the beginning when you bought the car to get the longer range out of the car. Mercedes-Benz have rear-wheel steering on their cars, okay? They don't switch it on unless you pay the 8,500 Rand annual subscription for the rear-wheel steering. BMW used to charge for Apple CarPlay. They charged 1,200 Rand connection fee, which they then enabled over the internet if you chose to do it, if you didn't buy Apple CarPlay at the beginning. And then there was a revolt, and Apple CarPlay, is now standard feature. So we can in the future start to see car app stores where you can start to buy features for your car to upgrade.
Makes sense. I mean, I know that it sounds to people, you're trying to rope me in on extras and now you're going to make me pay for things that I should have got for free. But some of these things are not for free, and you should be paying a subscription for them, for heaven's sake, because they add extra value. It's like, you can go onto the internet and you can buy a game and you can buy the add-ons to that game.
Exactly. And you can, and we all know in the gaming world, if you played games when you were younger, you could, buy the next level, or you could buy the next part of the game. And cars are becoming exactly the same thing. BMW's got the connected drive store where you can go and buy upgrades. So in the future, cars will come fully stacked, I think. And it's also cheaper for manufacturers to make one car. So one model of a car, you don't have to worry about, okay, this car needs electric windows, this car needs an aircon. You just make it fully stacked, and you turn it off via software updates. And imagine how much simpler the factory gets.
And then also you'll end up with a whole cottage industry of hackers who will be able to do that stuff for you for free, who will disintermediate the manufacturers on that level, because they'll know that the stuff's already installed, and they'll be able to hack the system to get it switched on for you. So that's obviously the next level.
If you think Gareth is just talking about fantasy, it's a reality. If you remember back in 2008, 2009, 2010, and it even happens today, jailbreaking iPhones. I don't know if you came across jailbreak. Yep. So that's exactly what happened to Apple, and then you could access a third-party store. So it wouldn't surprise me if this begins to happen.
Very, very good. All right.
And then Ford, the Ford F-150, which is a fully electric, what in America calls truck, which is a bakkie. So there was a wedding that was going on, and if you want the link to the video, I can post it. But there was a wedding, and the power went out at this wedding in the United States. I don't think they've got load shedding, but somehow there was a power failure. And just before the wedding started, and there were two guests who had Ford F-150s. Now, if you know the Ford F-150, it's got 120 and 220 volt plugs in the bakkie section of the
Unreal.
truck.
Where you put the jacuzzi.
There, where you put you can't put the jacuzzi. Not in that truck. You will get
anymore.
So what the wedding organizers did was they ran extension cords, and this wedding went ahead like clockwork using the Ford F-150's 120 volt plugs.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
And then you think that speeding only happens in South Africa. In Derbyshire, England, I'm not sure if that's part of the West Rand of England or not.
Why do you say that, Derbyshire? Why do you say that's the West Rand?
I'm just guessing 2 and 2. Maybe it's the East Rand. I don't know. I live here, so it's fine. But a Mercedes-Benz AMG G63 driver was nabbed at 209 kilometers an hour, and guess what his excuse was?
What? He was in a hurry.
Needed to poop.
He needed to go to the toilet.
Oh no! Really? That was
And then finally, Gareth, the DMV Evaluators, which is a car testing company like the license departments in South Africa, in the US, they are failing people who come to their facility with electric cars.
Really? Why?
Yes. And it turns out that this one driver who made a big stink about it, and this story then surfaced, he went and did his driving test and failed. So he asked why, and the instructor said, "Well, the car wasn't set to chill mode, and the steering wasn't set to comfort. And then while you were driving, I could feel that the car was braking, and you weren't pushing the brake pedal."
Oh my God! So this is nonsense. This is just like this is where like the Stone Age meets the modern age.
Exactly. So people are failing their driving tests because the instructors want all the technology on the car switched off in order for you to pass your driving test.
It's ridiculous. Wow.
So I wonder what's going to happen in South Africa. Somebody must
my word.
a driving test in South Africa in an I-Pace or a Mienie SE or something, and I'd be interested to see what the
who gave you your license, your driver's test, because I remember there was this old oom. He was like an old Afrikaans oom who was my driver's license guy, and he was. I don't even know if he was awake during most of my test because. He looked like he was probably about 85 years old in the shade. And clearly he'd done this so many times that for him, the most exciting thing that could have happened is that I could have crashed. But luckily that didn't happen. So eventually, by my second or third try, I got it right. This old man would definitely not have known what to do with an electric car. There's no way.
But also, Gareth, that was 20 plus years ago. So I'm sure it might be a bit different now. And instructors are used to seeing more technology. But I remember mine told me that I'd failed, and I was distraught and I was crying because it was my birthday. And then he said, "I'm only joking. You passed." I mean, who does that? Hopefully that changed.
Oh man, that's funny.
All right, George. What else?
Well, I've got one more story if you'd like. Cherry South Africa has officially launched, and they're opening up 30 dealerships. Now, this is another Chinese brand. So, Haval has entered the country, and these Chinese brands are coming into the market and absolutely decimating car prices, which is a good thing for the consumer. And these cars aren't too bad, actually. If you've driven
Cherries, I've seen a couple of them around, and they obviously are, good value for money. Whether or not they're the kind of car that everybody dreams about, I doubt. But good for them that anybody who can expand their business in the last couple of years deserves all the praise we can give them, right?
Yes, and they're bringing the EQ1 and the EQ5 as well, which are full electric vehicles.
Good for them. All right. So that's Cherry, Chery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right, George. Good stuff. We've had a nice time this morning. That Devilsdorp discussion was really, really cool too. You can go and listen to the podcast if you missed anything. And we will see you on Monday at 6 o'clock, bright and early. Have a good weekend, everybody.